I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, yesterday's Ghost 16 imagery gave us just a lot of neat things to look at. For example, the cutoff low off of California here. This was the source of those strong easterly downslope winds, which we saw hitting 70 to 80 miles an hour here in Southern California earlier this week. We can see the moisture transport out ahead of that. That's going to set up on a stationary boundary here between Texas and South Carolina. That's going to add for some very heavy rainfall here. Now, the next system that's going to hit this same area is actually waiting in the wings just off the image here, off the Pacific Northwest. But come back to the other side of the country. You can see some good lake effect snow that was moving through the Great Lakes. The lakes are still relatively ice-free, and so any cold air that blows across this throughout the next 6 weeks is going to give us good lake effect snow. But speaking of snow, we can see it here slightly under the clouds of where the snow extent is in the Midwest. But notice the southern plains, getting up here into parts of the northern and high plains, all the way up in Alberta, there's a lot of places in here that don't have a lot of snow. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But I would like to show you the one, at least, really unique feature here. And let's go right into Indiana. You see, when we saw the skies clear yesterday, there were a couple of very unique bands of snow right in through here. And I just think it's fascinating to look at these bands of snow and how they got set up here on our satellite imagery. Now, speaking of snow, I want to take you back to the West Coast. Sierra Nevada mountains right now, as of January 20th, and part of the Intermountain West, we know we're missing quite a bit of snow. Let me rewind the clock a decade ago when we had a big La Nina event, similar to what we had this year. And what you've got is quite a bit more snow in the mountains as through this point of the year. So January 20th, 2011, and here it is 2021. So the snow that's missing in the West has been critical to the drought issues that the West has been enduring. We can talk about that by looking here first at our Basin average snow water content. This comes from NRCS SnowTel sites. Now what's important is to see this same map in February and March. All right, but at this point, the Sierra Nevada mountains sit between 40 and 60%, and much of the Intermountain West here is seeing our values well below average. You want to see these numbers up around 100% throughout the entire season. Some change is coming to these regions, and I'm going to talk about that in a few moments. But why we haven't seen it yet? The jet stream, which has been screaming since October coming off of Japan here, has just been sent up into this part of Canada and then dove across the United States like that. It's met up with the subtropical branch of the jet stream here. But what we're missing is this component of the flow, coming from Hawaii, the Pineapple Express into California. And the anomalous flow has been bunched up into three large ridges. There's one here, there's been one here, and there's another one here in the North Atlantic. And we're going to talk about those ridges and their position here in a few moments, but they're really robbing the momentum, especially out of the subtropical jet stream. And it's largely been a consequence of the La Nina, stuff going on with the MJO, and a few other pieces in the flow of the atmosphere. But what we get out of it is this. Since October of last year, which is the beginning of the current water year, this is our percent of normal precipitation. And in Southern California, according to the CPC data, through 2021, early 2021, the last 6 months have been the driest in the last 40 years. And in Northern California, it's the fourth driest. So without a substantial permanent change in the flow of the jet stream pattern for the West, we're going to continue to see our drought problems. Now, later on this morning, we're going to get a brand new drought monitor update, and I want to address a few things about this. One, here in the northern plains, we should not expect much change in this through the coming months. The reason why? The soil is frozen. Snow that does come into this area, remember, snow doesn't have much liquid content to it, and a lot of it melts off. In the southern plains, getting back to the Four Corners states, back to California, until that subtropical component of the jet stream gets going, this doesn't change much. I have some near-term relief, but it won't be completely corrective of this drought. But the area that I want to watch most carefully has actually been the area that we've seen a lot of improvement in the last 3 months. Let me show you. You see down here with those snowstorms earlier in the year and some heavy precip, northern Texas into Oklahoma and basically over into parts of Missouri, we've seen improvement in this region. This is our 3-month drought monitor class improvement. But what I want to notice in this area is what's happened lately. Over the last week, and remember on Monday we talked about that big dust storm that went through here. Over the last week, this area has been missed. And there's been other areas too, but I want to focus in on that part of the plains. Because as we go through the next 10 days, the European model, while it brings in great moisture for the southwest into California, a lot of excessive moisture from parts of Arkansas through the Tennessee Valley and down to the Gulf Coast, and some big snows here. Look at what's missed. That area in through here, and then in this part of the northern plains back into Montana, and then the Pacific Northwest. You can also see drier conditions expected in the Northeast as well. And what I think is so important about this pattern is, if it's not going to change enough to bring in the moisture to the southern plains, I do not want to see drought fill back in where we've seen improvement as of late. So let's talk about the near-term pattern. There's a ridge here, and the flow around it is coming just like that. For those of you that are in the west, southwest especially, then coming out of Texas over toward Illinois, watch this trough right there. It is going to cut down and kick off a very vigorous system early next week. But in the near term, that ridge over the Caribbean is pumping quite a bit of moisture in through here. It's met with winds coming out of the west from Texas, and then northwest winds to the north of there. And what that points to is that right in this area, we're going to be seeing almost a stationary boundary on which we expect to see multiple rounds of rain this week. Let's go take a look at it by going right to our high-resolution NAM model. So you're going to see in this animation here that right along this area, we're expecting rain today and into tomorrow, some heavy rain, and it's just going to be flowing from west to east. So as you notice here, if I play this again, it's going to be a persistent and steady, albeit light and sometimes, rainfall. Now, in addition to that, let's go into the northeast. Coming out of Ontario here, there's a clipper system, and it's going to help bring in some cold enough air to give us some snow in the Great Lakes. And what's helping that is the high pressure cell sliding right in through here, pulling that colder air through the Great Lakes. So we're going to see some more lake effect snow. But one last thing to notice, here comes our next system cutting into California. And it's going to add a lot of moisture. I'll show you that in a few moments down here to the Four Corner States and begin to spread some snow here across the plains. Multiple chances of snow right here in the midsection of the country. To see that, let's flip over to the European model and play forward to Saturday morning, which is what we've already seen. So here's our high pressure cell that's in place. The snow spreading out of Wyoming into parts of Nebraska, South Dakota, and eventually over to Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. But this good snow here in the west, we love seeing this, and better moisture for California out of this next system as well. Well, going into Saturday evening, now going into Sunday morning, that low emerges, the first round of snow moves to the Great Lakes, and the second system really takes shape here. Now, I'll show you how much rain's coming to Arizona in a few moments, but it's quite a bit. And as that low ejects out of the southern Rockies and gets into Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, I want to watch out for a couple of things. This will be the second round of heavy rain in this area. Could be some heavy rains up into this part of Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, and southern Illinois. Right on the northern edge of this, warm air that's coming in this area, I'm going to be watching for the chance for the changeover of that rain to some sleet and freezing rain. But round number 2 of snow on the backside. Now this low is going to move into Missouri and Illinois throughout the day on Monday. We could get some heavier snows from southern Michigan over to southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, Iowa, and the winds on the backside of this are going to be quite strong. To the south, heavy rain pulling through here. And again, I told you, watch out for that mixture of sleet and freezing rain. And getting over here into Virginia could get some cold air damming and the chance for some freezing rain right here along the Appalachian Mountains. Now this is just round 1. Round 2 comes in, adding even more rainfall and snow into Arizona and into California, which is great. We want to see that relief in the drought in that region. Meanwhile, through early next week, that low pushes on off to the north and east and loses some of its strength. And some higher pressure tries to build in behind it. But there's another system here waiting in the wings for the middle end of next week. So let's come back and take a closer look at the system for Monday, Tuesday. The European model, the ensemble members are tightly clustering right here around the path of that low, with the second low coming in behind it here in Nevada. So it's good to see the model getting consistent here. The GFS is a bit late to the game, though. It's keeping the low back in kind of like Arkansas, Oklahoma area, whereas the Europeans got it already advancing pretty far to the north. We normally find that the GFS plays catch-up and gets caught up to what the European model suggests here, so we'll watch it carefully. But they do both have the second system coming into the west. Now, in terms of snowfall, with the low position here, the heaviest snow band is going to be back to the north of it. And this is the probability of getting at least 3 inches of snow. So you can see right in through that corridor our best chances here of getting our heaviest snow. Lake effect still going here, which is good. And the west, look at the snow we're going to be putting into the Four Corner States, into the Klamath Mountains, getting down to the Sierra Nevada. Love to see the increase there. A note for the Midwest, if the position of this low moves south, take the snow with it. Take the snow band right in through here and move it south as well. That'll be a trend we'll be watching for over the weekend in the model runs. But come over to the liquid side of this. If you are in this area, the potential here for picking up not just an inch, but maybe up to 2 inches of rainfall is relatively high. This is the probability of getting 1 inch through the next week. It's going to be quite wet. And look at this part of Arizona. Look at part of California. We are, with these next 2 systems, really increasing the rainfall chances. But my question is, and this is what we started off with, is it sustained? Is it going to continue? Well, the jet stream is just not set up to do that. We'd like to see this. I mean, here it comes in next week, bringing in that trough. This is good, but the flow's not coming from here. So this is relatively temporary as it slides through. But over the next week, this is our Precipitation Anomaly Map. Parts of the Four Corner States really going to help work against that drought, but not correct it. We're dry in the Pacific Northwest, as you can see here as well. But that's not going to stay that way for too long. The reason why? By day 10, we see a retrograding pattern. What's happened is this trough has now moved a bit to the west into the Gulf of Alaska. The ridge that was sitting in this area has moved over toward Hudson Bay, and the ridge that was in the Gulf of Alaska is now moving toward parts of the Aleutian Islands. The end result is you get much better flow into the west for week 2, hence higher precipitation amounts, and what we think could be a pretty active pattern in through here, and also maybe even continued snows here for parts of the upper Midwest. But as I started off telling you, what I'm concerned about with this pattern is what it doesn't produce in this area. We do not see into week 2 an active pattern that's in through the plains, and that's an area I'm concerned about drought development. Now, bringing this discussion over to temperatures, we've been very mild for the last month, and we talked about this on our Monday report. Why it's been so mild has largely been because the La Nina, which typically brings in a lot of colder air here, has not been able to do that. The jet stream has just not been configured into a big blocking high pressure system here. One blocking high has been over in that area, and you saw me draw this earlier. It's been over here. It's off the image. And because it's not sat in this area, we've not gotten the really cold air coming in through this region. Now, as we think about that, again, look at the flow. This is what would have to change in order to get a change in this pattern. Now, is it going to be helped by the polar vortex? Well, we know we've had a big disruption in the polar vortex here, but it's sent its coldest air to Europe, Russia, Kazakhstan, China, Mongolia. And as I play this forward, the disruption stays in place, but we don't see the models advertising any deep stratospheric polar vortex centers coming over North America. But I want you to notice this. Those zonal winds are weak, and they're not forecast to recover to come back up to normal anytime soon, which means throughout the month of February, I want to be watching the stratospheric polar vortex to potentially link up with the tropospheric polar vortex and hit North America. But that could be weeks away from us, all right? Weeks away. So what are we dealing with in the near term? We're dealing with a change in the Gulf of Alaska. And I'm going to talk to you about something called the EPO, the East Pacific Oscillation. Now, throughout much of early January, the East Pacific Oscillation was positive. And when we have a positive EPO, we tend to get a trough in the Gulf of Alaska. So the flow of the atmosphere was doing something a bit like that. This is what brought in that mild Pacific air and kept things relatively warm throughout much of the eastern half of North America. The EPO was forecast, as you see here, to go negative. And if it goes negative, what we end up getting here is a big ridge in the Gulf of Alaska and troughs that cut across the United States. But great discussion across many meteorologists, colleagues of mine. And what we've seen here is that the models have trended back toward positive EPO. And you just saw that. And what it gives you is this. Now, ridging in through here is drier. Troughs here, wetter. And you saw that a few moments ago. But overall, if this pattern retrogrades like this, what it does to our temperatures, well, let's talk about it as we finish up this video. Here's our temperatures, max temperatures today on Thursday, and the color shading tells you the departure from normal. Going into Friday, got one brief shot at some colder air that's going to go from there into the northeast. See it? So this is getting into the weekend. But as we go from that point forward, Saturday into Sunday and into Monday, look at the colder air that initially arrives in the west. And right in between it is where that trough is going to cut through, and so is the low pressure system. So this is the really wet week down here, snow on the backside. But going from Monday into Tuesday and Wednesday, I have to say that might be the extent of this shot at cold air, because going out into the 5 to 10 day time period with that trough retrograding, look at the return. The models have really trended toward warmer conditions. Now remember, it's the heart of winter, but warmer conditions here. It's in the GFS and it's also in the European. You can see the same thing. And going out now to the beginning of February, the model's again favoring warmer conditions in that area, and the coldest air tucking back into Alaska. This is the effect of that retrograding trough, and there are a lot of reasons for it, but I'm just going to show you the model trend here so that we can see the net effect of this. Now remember, it's still cold here, it's still winter, but it's mild compared to normal. I'll finish with this. The latest European weeklies. What I don't like is that the moisture return to California and the Four Corner states seems to be temporary. See it here? Going through the month of February, which is what you're looking at, it does not appear that that's a sustained wetter pattern. We keep the active Ohio River Valley storm track. Clippers coming in this direction, wet in the northwest. It also suggests that the coldest air begins to build a reservoir here. And what I'm going to tell you is going through February, even though there could be a subtropical ridge that keeps much of the south warmer, we're going to have to watch for that colder air to get let out at times, but that may not be until we get past the first week of February. So from there, I'll go ahead and wrap it up and wish you all a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again on Monday. Thanks.